Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we are doing a deep dive into Superforecasting by Philip Tetlock.
Oh, yeah. This is a fascinating one.
It is.
Really gets you thinking about how we think about the future.
Exactly. And you know how some people just seem to have this knack for predicting what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, this book dives deep into how those people, those super forecasters, do what they do.
Right.
What sets them apart from, the average person and even experts.
Well, I think that's what's so interesting about this book, right?
Yeah.
You would think that experts would be the best at predicting things.
Right, you'd think so.
Because that's their area of expertise.
Exactly. They've got all this experience.
But the book starts off with this kind of mind-blowing fact.
Okay.
Which is that in many cases, the average expert's predictions are about as accurate
As what?
as a chimpanzee randomly throwing darts at possible outcomes.
Oh, wow.
It's like...
So they're basically just guessing.
Yeah,
They're basically it's like flipping a coin.
Yeah, it's pretty unsettling when you think about it.
It is unsettling because you're relying on these experts for, making big decisions.
And it highlights this key point that often experts rely too heavily on intuition and experience, which can sometimes be clouded by bias.
Right. To get stuck in certain ways of thinking.
Yeah, they get stuck in these thinking patterns that lead to predictable errors.
Okay, so that's kind of a scary thought.
Yes.
The book also offers hope, I guess.
It does.
Like, how do we break free from those patterns?
Right.
What are the super forecasters doing differently?
Well, one of the things that the book dives into is these two main ways of thinking.
Okay.
So you've got system one, which is our fast intuitive thinking.
Okay.
And then you have system two, which is slower and more deliberate.
So system one is like our gut reaction.
Yeah.
Our first instinct.
Yeah. It's like, when you see a snake in the grass and you jump back.
Right.
You don't even think about it.
You don't even think about it. You just react.
Yeah.
It's instant.
And then system two is when you actually stop and think things through.
Exactly. And it's great for everyday decisions, that system one thinking.
Yeah.
But when it comes to complex issues, that same instinct can actually trip us up.
Oh, interesting.
That's where system two comes in.
Okay.
It's about slowing down, engaging in critical thinking, questioning our initial assumptions.
So are you saying that super forecasters are like masters of system two thinking?
They've learned to recognize when their system one intuition might be off.
Okay.
And consciously engage system two.
Oh, so it's about knowing when to use which system.
Exactly.
To analyze things more deeply.
Yeah, and the book showcases this guy, Bill Flack, who consistently outperforms professionals in making predictions.
Okay.
And he's this retired guy living a pretty simple life.
So he's not like some, Wall Street guru or anything.
No, he's not. He doesn't have some secret formula.
So it's secret then?
He's just incredibly skilled at using certain thinking habits.
Oh, interesting.
He's really good at engaging that system two thinking.
So it's not about being a genius or having some innate talent.
Right.
It's about learning and practicing specific thinking skills.
Exactly. And that's what the Good Judgment Project, this massive forecasting tournament, set out to study.
Okay.
They wanted to know what makes these super forecasters tick. And they discovered that foresight is a skill, not a gift.
Oh, wow.
Anyone can cultivate it.
That's good news.
It is.
It is.
It means we're not all stuck with, whatever our initial intuition is. We can actually get better at this.
Okay, I am really intrigued now.
Yeah.
What are some of those secrets they uncovered about the super forecasters?
Well, one of the big ones is that average forecasters rely too heavily on that quick system one thinking.
Okay.
The book gives some really interesting examples of this, like the bat and ball problem.
Okay. I love a good brain teaser.
Are you ready for it?
Hit me with it.
Okay, a bat and a ball cost $1.10 total.
Okay.
The bat costs $1 more than the ball?
Uh-huh.
How much does the ball cost?
10 cents.
You just experienced system one in action.
Did I get it wrong?
Most people instantly say 10 cents.
Okay.
But if you pause and engage that system two thinking,
Oh.
you realize the ball actually costs 5 cents.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
I totally fell for that.
It's so easy to do.
Yeah.
Our brains just jump to those quick conclusions.
Okay, I see how that can happen in real life too. You just go with what feels right without really thinking it through.
Exactly. And the book highlights another example, the 2011 Norway attacks. Initially, everyone assumed Islamic extremists were behind it because that was the narrative that was so readily available in people's minds.
Right. It fit the pattern of recent events.
Exactly.
So everyone just jumped to that conclusion.
But it turned out the attacker was a right-wing extremist.
Wow.
So
That's a powerful example of how our brains can mislead us.
it really is. It shows how our bias towards familiar narratives can really distort our predictions.
It makes you think twice about those, knee-jerk assumptions.
Absolutely. It does. And the book also uses this example of Steve Ballmer.
Oh, yeah, the former Microsoft CEO.
Yeah.
He was pretty famously wrong about the iPhone.
Yeah. He predicted that the iPhone would never gain significant market share.
Famous last words, right?
Yeah, but what's interesting is that his statement was really vague.
Oh, right.
He never actually defined what significant market share meant.
So it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It was, and it highlights a key takeaway for aspiring super forecasters.
Okay.
Be precise with your language.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, avoid those vague pronouncements when making predictions.
Got it.
Clarity and precision are absolutely crucial in forecasting.
Okay, so we've got avoiding thinking traps, slowing down,
Yeah.
and using precise language. What else sets these super forecasters apart?
Another key difference is their comfort with uncertainty.
Okay.
Instead of trying to force a yes or no answer, they think in shades of maybe.
Oh, I like that phrase, shades of maybe.
It's a good one, right?
So it's not about being 100% certain.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging that there's always a degree of uncertainty
Right.
when predicting the future.
They embrace probabilistic thinking.
Okay.
Instead of asking, will this event happen, they ask, what is the probability of this event happening?
So that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
You're acknowledging that you don't have a crystal ball,
Right.
but you're still trying to make the most informed prediction possible.
Precisely. And this contrasts with the way many people think, like the fictional Leon Panetta in the movie Zero Dark 30.
Oh, yeah?
He demands a yes or no answer about bin Laden's location and rejects those nuanced probabilities presented by his advisors.
Right. He wants that certainty.
He wants that certainty, but the book also mentions that the real Leon Panetta was actually a very probabilistic thinker.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny how Hollywood takes liberties.
It is, and it brings us to another really interesting figure that's featured in the book, Robert Rubin, the former Secretary of the Treasury.
Yes.
Now, he was known for this probabilistic thinking. But what's funny is that he was kind of baffled by all the attention he got for it.
Right. He thought it was so obvious.
He was like, why is everyone making a big deal about this?
This is just how you think.
So thinking in terms of probabilities of shades of maybe,
Yeah.
it was just second nature to him.
Exactly. And his reaction highlights a crucial point. We need to normalize this way of thinking.
I agree.
Make it part of how we approach decisions in all aspects of our lives.
It's not some secret knowledge just for experts.
Exactly. It's a practical tool for anyone.
Okay, so we've got avoiding thinking traps, embracing probabilistic thinking, using precise language.
Yeah.
What other tools do super forecasters have in their arsenal?
One that I find particularly intriguing is Fermiizing.
Okay, that sounds kind of intimidating.
It sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple.
Okay, break it down for me like I'm 5.
All right, imagine you have a seemingly impossible question, like how many piano tuners are in Chicago? Fermiizing is a method for breaking down that huge question into smaller, more manageable estimates.
So you're taking this complex problem and chopping it up into bite-sized pieces.
Exactly.
I like it. Tell me more.
Okay, so let's stick with that piano tuner question.
Okay.
We start by thinking, how many pianos are there in Chicago?
Right.
Then we make some educated guesses.
Okay.
How many people live in Chicago?
Uh-huh.
What percentage of households might own a piano?
Right.
How often do pianos need tuning?
Okay.
How many pianos can one tuner tune in a day?
And by answering all those little questions,
Yeah.
you can come up with a pretty good guess for the total number of piano tuners.
Exactly.
So even if I know nothing about piano tuning,
Right.
I can still use logic and basic assumptions to make a decent estimate.
That's the beauty of Fermiizing. It helps you tackle these intimidating questions by breaking them down into smaller, more manageable parts.
And super forecasters use this technique all the time.
They
Wow. So even if you're not an expert, you can use Fermiizing to make surprisingly accurate predictions
Yeah.
in areas where you feel clueless.
Exactly.
I'm guessing this ties into another concept from the book, base rates.
You got it.
Okay.
Let's say you're trying to predict if a specific family, the Smiths, own a pet.
Okay.
You could focus on what you know about them.
Okay.
Do they seem like pet people? Do they have a yard?
Right? Do they post pictures of dogs on Instagram?
Exactly. But super forecasters would first ask what percentage of households own pets in general.
So you're looking at the bigger picture first.
Yeah, the general trend.
Before getting caught up in the specifics of one case.
Exactly. The base rate gives you a starting point, a foundation for your prediction.
Okay.
Then you can use those specific details about the Smiths, the inside view, to adjust that initial estimate.
It's like that saying when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras.
Yeah.
You start with the most likely explanation and then look for evidence to confirm or refute it.
That's a great analogy. It highlights the importance of starting with that base rate,
Okay.
the most common scenario, and then adjusting from there.
Okay, so we've got Fermiizing, using base rates thinking in probabilities, and being aware of those sneaky System 1 thinking traps.
It's a lot to keep in mind.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Sounds like superforecasting is all about being incredibly methodical and analytical.
It definitely requires practice and discipline, but it's also surprisingly rewarding.
Yeah.
The more you practice these techniques, the better you become at understanding the world and making accurate predictions.
Okay, so it's not just about, getting the right answer. It's about improving your thinking process overall.
Exactly.
And that can benefit you in so many different areas of life.
Absolutely. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, there's more.
There's so much more to uncover about these super forecasters.
I can't wait to hear more.
We'll be back in a flash to continue our deep dive into the fascinating world of super forecasting.
Sounds good. All right, we are back and we're talking about super forecasters. And I got to say, one of the things that really blew my mind in this book is how these super forecasters actually go about updating their predictions. Like, it's not just about getting new information right.
Right.
It's about how they incorporate that information.
Yeah.
And how often they do it.
It's a whole process.
It is a process.
Yeah.
So what's the secret sauce here?
Well, think about how most people react to new information.
Okay.
They often just ignore it if it contradicts what they already believe.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that.
Right. Or they completely flip their opinion based on one single piece of data.
It's like I'm either sticking to my guns no matter what, or I'm suddenly an expert on something after reading one article.
Right, exactly. Super forecasters are different.
How so?
They update their predictions more frequently.
Okay.
And in smaller increments than the average person.
So they're constantly tweaking their predictions
Yeah.
as new information comes in. But they're not making these huge drastic changes based on any one thing.
Exactly. It's like making tiny adjustments to a ship's rudder.
Okay.
Those small adjustments over time can have a huge impact on your course.
I like that analogy.
The book uses this example of a super forecaster named Tim Minto to illustrate this.
Okay, what did Tim do?
So there was this question about whether a foreign military would carry out operations in Syria before a certain date.
Okay.
And then President Obama makes this public announcement that basically guarantees the answer is going to be yes.
So a pretty big event that changes the whole situation.
Huge, right?
Yeah.
And get this, Tim updated his forecast 34 times.
34 times.
And in response to that announcement and other related events.
Whoa. That seems a little excessive, doesn't it?
It might seem like a lot, but the average update was only 3.5%.
Oh, okay.
He was making these small adjustments to his prediction.
Got it.
As he processed each piece of new information.
So he wasn't overreacting to each new development.
Right.
But he was still incorporating those nuances into his overall forecast.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is, and it makes sense, right? If you don't adjust your thinking at all, you're ignoring valuable information.
Right.
But if you overreact to every new piece of data, you're just being swayed by the latest headlines.
You're like that ship being tossed around in a storm instead of steadily steering towards your destination.
Another great analogy.
I'm on a roll.
And speaking of incorporating new information, we should talk about Bayesian updating.
Okay, Bayesian updating.
Yeah. Have you heard of this?
I have heard the term before, but to be honest, it always sounded a little intimidating.
It sounds complicated.
Can you give us the, simple explanation of what it is?
Yeah.
And why it matters?
At its core, Bayesian updating is a way to systematically combine new evidence with your existing beliefs to arrive at a more accurate view of the world.
So it's like a continuous learning loop.
Exactly. You're always updating your understanding as you learn more.
Give me an example.
Yeah. Okay, let's say you think there's a 50% chance of rain tomorrow based on, your general knowledge of weather patterns.
Okay, 50-50 chance of rain.
That's your prior belief.
Got it.
Then you check the weather forecast and it says there's an 80% chance of rain.
Okay.
That's your new evidence.
So do I just ditch my initial thought and go with the 80%?
Not quite. Bayesian updating provides this framework for combining your prior belief with the new evidence.
So instead of completely abandoning my initial understanding, I'm kind of refining it.
Exactly.
Based on new information.
And in this example, the Bayesian approach might lead you to an updated belief of, say, a 70% chance of rain.
Okay.
You've taken both your initial understanding and the new forecast into account.
I'm starting to see the value in this.
Yeah.
It's a way to be more systematic and less biased in how we incorporate new information.
Exactly. You're constantly learning, adapting, and refining your understanding of the world.
It's like we're constantly downloading new knowledge and updating our mental software.
Yeah. Maybe not quite that instant, but the principle is similar.
All right, so we've talked about how super forecasters update their predictions.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the mindset behind all of this?
Right.
The book emphasizes the importance of a growth mindset.
It does.
Now, that's a concept I've heard before.
Yeah.
But remind me, what exactly is a growth mindset, and how does it relate to super forecasting?
It comes down to whether you believe your abilities are fixed or can be developed.
Okay.
So someone with a fixed mindset might say, I'm just not good at math. I was born that way.
Right.
But someone with a growth mindset would say, I can get better at math if I work at it and practice.
So it's the difference between believing you're stuck with what you have
Yeah.
versus believing you can always improve.
Exactly. And the book argues that super forecasters tend to have a growth mindset.
Okay.
They believe forecasting is a skill that can be developed.
Which makes sense, right? If you think you can't get any better, why would you even bother trying?
Right, exactly. But if you believe you can improve with practice and feedback, you're much more likely to put in the effort to learn from your mistakes and become a more accurate forecaster.
I love that. It's basically saying that anyone can become a better forecaster.
Yeah.
A better thinker in general. If they embrace that growth mindset.
That's the message. And the book uses John Maynard Keynes, the brilliant economist, as a great example of this.
Yeah.
He was famous for being willing to change his mind when presented with new evidence.
Wasn't there a famous quote of his? Something like, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?
That's the one.
It's a good one.
It perfectly embodies that growth mindset.
Yeah.
It's about being open to new information, challenging your assumptions, and admitting when you're wrong.
It's actually a sign of strength, not weakness.
Right.
To be able to change your mind
Yeah.
and adapt to new information.
It demonstrates intellectual flexibility and a commitment to seeking the truth.
Yeah.
Even if it means letting go of your previous beliefs.
It's interesting because we often think of strong leaders as being unwavering in their convictions.
We do.
So does the book kind of go against that traditional view?
It makes a fascinating point. It suggests that the best leaders are those who can balance decisiveness with a willingness to listen to diverse perspectives and change course when needed.
So being open to new information.
Right. They embody this idea of perpetual beta, which comes from the world of software development.
Perpetual beta.
Have you heard this term?
I think I have, but remind me what it means.
It means that a software program is never truly finished.
Okay.
It's always being updated and improved based on new information and user feedback.
So it's constantly evolving.
Exactly. The book argues that super forecasters have this same perpetual beta mindset.
They're always looking to refine their methods.
Yeah, learn from their mistakes and get better.
So they're like lifelong learners, constantly iterating and improving their skills.
Yes, and that's what makes them so successful. The world is constantly changing, and the only way to stay ahead is to be constantly learning and adapting.
I love that. It's inspiring. It sounds like they would work best in teams then, right?
You're absolutely right. That's one of the most surprising findings of the Good Judgment Project.
What was it?
Putting super forecasters on teams actually boosted their accuracy even further.
Really? I would have thought they'd be these lone wolves working independently.
Yeah, you would think that, but the data shows that super teams outperform not only regular forecasting teams, but even prediction markets.
Wow. So they beat the wisdom of the crowd.
It did. It's amazing.
So what makes these super teams so effective?
Well, one key factor is that they foster a culture of constructive confrontation.
Constructive confrontation.
Yeah, it sounds kind of strange, doesn't it?
Those two words don't seem like they should go together.
It's about respectfully challenging each other's assumptions and predictions.
Okay.
Focusing on finding the truth, not on winning an argument or proving someone wrong.
So it's less about, I told you so,
Right.
and more about, let's figure out the best possible prediction together, even if it means admitting we were wrong.
Exactly. It's a collaborative effort to refine predictions and get closer to the truth.
Okay. I like that.
The book also highlights the importance of actively open-minded thinking within these teams.
Actively open-minded thinking. What does that mean?
It's the ability to consider different perspectives,
Okay.
Carefully weigh the evidence and be willing to change your mind when presented with new information.
So it's that growth mindset we were talking about earlier applied to a team setting.
Precisely. And super teams are led by people who can balance being decisive with being open to different viewpoints.
So they lead the charge while still being receptive to their team's input.
Yes. The book also talks about the important role of givers on these teams.
What's a giver?
These are the people who are always willing to share information, help their teammates, and go above and beyond to make the team successful.
So it's not just about individual brilliance.
Right.
It's about creating a collaborative, supportive environment.
Yeah.
Where everyone contributes and learns from each other.
Exactly. And this idea of super teams and their impressive accuracy brings us to another fascinating challenge that the book grapples with. Predicting black swan events.
Ah, yes. Black swans, those unexpected events that catch everyone off guard and have a huge impact.
It's a topic that Nassim Taleb, another thought leader in this field, has written extensively about.
Yes. Okay, so for our listener who maybe hasn't heard of this term, can you give us a quick rundown of what we mean by black swan events?
It refers to these highly improbable events that when they do happen have a massive impact. Things like 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, the rise of the internet. Nobody really saw them coming, but they changed everything.
They're those curveballs that just shatter our existing models of the world.
Exactly. And Taleb is skeptical of long-term forecasting, arguing that it's essentially impossible to predict events that far out, especially these black swan events.
Especially those.
Because the further out you try to predict, the more uncertain things become.
Makes sense.
But the book presents kind of a counter-argument to that.
It does.
Right.
It suggests that even though predicting black swans is inherently difficult, there are still things we can do to improve our understanding of risk and be better prepared for the unexpected.
Okay, but how can we prepare for something that we can't predict?
Well, the book argues that many seemingly unpredictable events actually have precursors, warning signs that we can learn to recognize and analyze.
So it's less about predicting the specific black swan event and more about understanding the underlying conditions that make such an event more likely.
Exactly. And because super forecasters are so skilled at thinking probabilistically and constantly updating their beliefs, they may be better equipped than others to identify those potential risks.
Interesting.
And adapt as things change. So it's like that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If we can't predict the specific black swan, we can at least try to mitigate the impact by being prepared for a wider range of possibilities.
That's a great way to put it. All this talk about forecasting accuracy brings up another crucial point that the book emphasizes,
which is
the importance of scoring and feedback.
Scoring and feedback. That sounds more like something you'd find in a classroom.
It does.
Than in the world of, forecasting.
Right.
Explain what you mean.
Well, think about how we measure progress in other fields, like medicine. Doctors don't just rely on gut feeling to determine if a treatment is working.
Right. They have all those clinical trials.
Exactly. They conduct experiments, they gather data, they analyze outcomes. And the book argues that we need similar systems in the world of forecasting. We need to measure how accurate our predictions are, provide feedback, and learn from our mistakes.
So it's about tracking our performance and using that information to get better over time.
Exactly.
That makes sense in theory, but it seems like it could be tough to put into practice.
You're right. This idea of scoring and feedback often meets resistance.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Especially in fields like intelligence and politics.
Because it requires vulnerability, right? Like you have to admit when you're wrong.
It can be tough when your reputation or career is on the line.
Right.
But the book argues that this transparency, this willingness to acknowledge our mistakes and learn from them, is essential for improving forecasting accuracy.
Right.
It uses this example of Ernest Amory Codman, a doctor in the early 1900s, who was a huge advocate for hospitals tracking patient outcomes.
So this idea of tracking outcomes to improve performance has been around for a while.
It has. Codman called his system the end result system. And it was all about holding doctors accountable for the effectiveness of their treatments.
That was a pretty radical idea back then, wasn't it?
Doctors were basically seen as infallible, but Codman believed that the only way to truly improve medical care was to track what was working, what wasn't. and use that information to get better.
Which is the same principle behind measuring the accuracy of forecasts.
It is. It's about creating a culture of accountability and continuous improvement.
It's amazing how these principles of super forecasting apply to so many different areas of life.
They really do. And the book makes a strong case for why we should embrace these principles in all our decisions.
Yeah.
From personal choices to business strategies to government policies.
Because at the end of the day, we're all making predictions about the future, even if we don't realize it.
Every decision we make is based on some prediction about what we think will happen.
So even something as simple as like deciding what to wear in the morning is a kind of mini forecast.
It is. You're predicting the weather.
Right.
How you want to feel, the kind of impression you want to make.
Wow, that puts things in a whole new light.
It's making you realize how much we rely on forecasting, even in our everyday lives. And the more we understand the principles of good forecasting, the better decisions we'll make in all aspects of our lives.
That's so true. But there's even more to learn from these super forecasters. Stay tuned, because we're about to dive even deeper into the world of accurate predictions. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of super forecasting.
Yes, this has been a fascinating journey.
It has. You know, as we wrap up this deep dive into super forecasting, what surprised you the most about these super forecasters?
You know, I went into this thinking they would be these eccentric geniuses, with tons of degrees and, all these accolades. But what really struck me was that they came from all walks of life.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, what united them wasn't some, extraordinary intellect, but a specific set of thinking habits.
Oh, okay.
A way of approaching problems that anyone can learn.
It's so empowering.
It is.
To think that anyone can become a better forecaster, a better thinker, if they're willing to put in the effort. And this isn't just about predicting, global events or political outcomes.
Right.
It's about making smarter decisions in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. The book makes a strong argument for why we should all strive to be more like these super forecasters.
Okay.
To cultivate their mindset of curiosity, humility, and a love of continuous learning.
So it's not about becoming some all-knowing oracle.
No, not at all.
It's about being more aware of our own biases, challenging our assumptions, and being open to new information.
Exactly. It's about becoming more thoughtful and deliberate in how we approach the world.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And one of the key takeaways for me is that improving our thinking abilities, our forecasting abilities, it's a continuous journey.
It is.
It's a perpetual beta mindset we were talking about.
Always striving to improve.
Yes.
And refine our understanding.
So for our listener who's feeling inspired right now to become a better forecaster, where should they start?
Well, first I'd say cultivate that growth mindset.
Okay.
Embrace the idea that you can always learn and improve.
Love it.
Don't shy away from feedback, even if it stings a little.
And don't be afraid to experiment. Right. Try out some of these techniques we've discussed, like Fermiizing or using base rates.
Yeah, see what works for you.
And find ways to incorporate scoring and feedback into your predictions.
Exactly. Track your accuracy, analyze your mistakes, and learn from them.
Because it's remarkable how much we can improve just by paying attention to our own thinking patterns.
It is. And be patient.
Yeah.
Becoming a super forecaster takes time and effort.
It's a skill that develops gradually through practice and persistence.
You got it.
And who knows? Maybe one day our listener will be among those elite super forecasters shaping the future with their insights and predictions.
That would be incredible. But even if they never reach that level, the skills they develop along the way will benefit them in countless ways.
It's a journey worth taking, for sure.
I want to leave our listener with one final thought. If super forecasting is a skill that anyone can cultivate, what areas of your life could benefit from improved forecasting?
What decisions are you facing, big or small, where a little bit of foresight could make a difference?
Start thinking like a super forecaster, apply those principles we've discussed, and see what happens.
You might be surprised by the results.
You might be.
I love that it's an invitation to step into the future with more confidence, more clarity, and a lot more curiosity.
And that's what this deep dive has been all about.
It has. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of super forecasting. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
We'll see you next time.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep looking ahead.